So, welcome everyone. This is Senate Committee on Institutions. It's Tuesday, May 6th. And this is our afternoon meeting, and we are going to speak with the parole board members whose terms are up so that we can confirm the governor's recommendation to continue their service. And we did complete the Capitol bill, as Senator Ingalls noted, and that is on its way. We had third reading this morning, and that's on its way to the House, which is a relatively big milestone. Okay, so let us get the folks on our screen.
Okay,
Linda.
you can all take your video stop off and come in. Yes.
Okay, and great. Katie Aiken is first, and let us introduce ourselves to you because I don't think we have met. I'm Wendy Harrison, and I represent the Wyndham District. Senator Ingalls.
Yeah, Russ Ingalls, Essex District.
And then let's mix it up.
Senator Douglas, Orleans District.
Okay, Rob.
And I'm Rob Plunkett. I'm your senator.
Joe Majors from Windsor.
Okay, and thank you. And Senator Ingalls and I were on this committee last year, so we have some familiarity with what the parole board does. Senator Plunkett has probably more familiar, or certainly has more familiarity with what the parole board does. But this is intended to be a conversation just to get to know you and for us to know what your thoughts are on the work of the parole board, if there's any way that the legislature can help in what you're doing, and just get to know each other. So you would like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Katie Aiken. I've been serving on the parole board now for about a year. And so this is so it's not that long of a term so far. I am also on the Human Services Board as well. So I am a lifelong Vermont resident, but I also have had the opportunity to serve on some other boards. I'm also on the school board for the SBSU and the MAU school board here in Bennington. And I also hold a Vermont license as an LICSW. So I've been working in mental health for over 11 years. So that's kind of my background. I also have, prior to that, I worked in the school system and worked for a lot of nonprofit agencies doing social work.
That's great. Well, your background sounds perfect for this job, and especially you being new. If you have things that you want us to know about, because obviously the way I see the goal of the board, and this would be something that this committee can talk about because we haven't. This is the first time we dealt with this. Is to review how incarcerated individuals are proceeding in their hopefully improvement in terms of their abilities and opportunities, and just your experience it sounds like it would be extremely helpful in this process.
Definitely. I one of the things, my last 11 years has been with the Medicaid designated agency for Bennington County. So I've had the opportunity to work with such a wide range of clients, many of them, for a lot of different reasons that they've come to me for counseling, addiction, trauma, anxiety, depression. It kind of runs the gamut, some couples counseling. And so one of the things that I've definitely found during my time with the parole board is that the amount of substance use that occurs for the offenders hasn't their original reason for these substances that they've become addicted to is the result of a lot of the trauma that they have endured. And this really spoke to me a lot in terms of my ability with United Counseling Service. They sent one of the best things that they were able to do is allow me the opportunity to go to so many different trainings. And so I became a certified trainer for ACEs, which is Adverse Childhood Experiences. And one of the things that really allowed us to make through that study was how trauma introduced in, even in infancy, really changes the biologic structure of our brains and leads us to poor, not just social impacts, but also health impacts. And so I use a lot of that knowledge, not just in my trauma work, but based on what I know is when I'm able to ask questions to the offenders during our parole hearings. And I think it's been really enlightening. I think not just for myself, but everyone that's in the parole hearings with me, they're able to actually think about some of those questions that I'm able to ask as a mental health professional that they might not have been able to really think to ask. Sometimes it's led me a little bit to sort of have to realize what my role is in that case. I'm not the counselor. I may be able to diagnose and, give medication recommendations, but I can't really do that in that setting. But I am able to ask the questions, which helps to get them thinking a lot more in terms of what should be these next steps for these offenders? What should we be looking at in terms of a release plan and what should be required? So I think it's been a really great connection for me.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really helpful in this process too. I hope you enjoy it and will continue doing it.
I absolutely enjoy it. Absolutely.
Good. Do folks have questions?
I think I'm good. I guess the one thing, what's the goal for each one of the people that you deal with? Is it almost a cookie cutter goal, what you want the end result to be, or do you tailor that to the individual?
You mean when we're considering parole?
Yes.
I think because we don't just look at considering parole, we look at also the violations for parole if they're on a current parole status. So that those outcomes may look very different. Should we be violating and reincarcerating, or should we be looking at possibly keeping them on parole, but with additional conditions and that sort of thing. But when we're looking at least when I am looking at whether or not to parole someone, for me, nothing is ever cookie cutter because each person isn't the same as someone else. So what someone may need coming out to be successful may look very different than what somebody else may need. So yes, there's some overarching goal for everyone, which is not to reoffend, but it's how we get there in those steps that I think is so important that we're mindful of when we're viewing what we're adding on for conditions or what we would like to see happen. And part of, I see my role on the parole board is making sure that the parole officers are making sure that these things that they're going to be requiring are appropriate and also needed. So one of the things I typically ask offenders is, what do you think you'll need coming out to be successful? Because a lot of times, and that comes from my work in therapy, because the therapist or anyone else, or even the parole officer in this case, may have ideas on what they would like to see or what they think the offender may need, which is great and may be very true. But I think if the offender is not buying into that and also getting a voice in what they're going to need to be successful, it might not be as productive. So it's important to have a combination of the two and really give the offender a voice in saying, this is what I think I'll need, along with what you would like me to do.
Is there a percentage that you put towards what the incarcerated person's activity in prison is, and then what say they had a exemplary behavior in prison, but a fairly egregious crime? How do you weigh that?
So we've looked at a structured model in terms of when we take everything into consideration. We do put a weight on that. We don't assign percentages per se to that, but it is something we consider. But we also take in so many other considerations. What sort of programming have they been able to complete? What sort of programming may they've wanted to do on their own? There may be things that DOC says, we would like you to complete these required programmings, but often what we find is the offender will say, I've done those, but I also went ahead and did these on my own. I went ahead and looked more towards what do I need for my education and completing those. I voluntarily joined these particular meetings that they have at corrections. And so that's weighted just as much as, how many disciplinary referrals were they given? Were they major? Were they minor? We take a look at how long apart were they? Were they substantiated or not? Are they happening very frequently? Were they assaultive in nature? We do take a look and make sure that we consider all of those. And that in combination with asking questions about, for me, it's asking more of those in-depth questions about their change, their willingness to change. It's not just, what do you see yourself doing when you get out? What do you have for a job lined up? Where are you going to live? For me, it's thinking about your past crimes. What have you done to sort of change that way of thinking? What sort of ways are things going to be a little bit different now? And how does that look? And then for me, sometimes it means asking the tough questions. And if I hear something that just seems a little off, I'll probe about that a little bit and dive into that, which I think has been really helpful for me as a therapist to be able to get in there and do, for sure, give some of those more thought-provoking questions.
Thank you, Kate.
That's really helpful. Yes, Senator.
So Katie, thank you for coming today. And so you asked a lot of questions, which is great. What do you think the participation level is for the most part that you get back when you're asking these questions?
Interestingly enough, it's a lot of times when during the parole hearings, the offenders can be a little nervous and quiet at first. So that's where I utilize a lot of my motivational interviewing skills to try to draw some of that out. So I don't just get the yes or no answers, to help them feel a little bit more at ease and make them think a little bit. So surprisingly, they really will a lot of times think a little bit and answer those questions thoughtfully.
So a lot of these
Especially when you
folks,
can't answer a yes or no.
so a lot of these folks have been through the system more than once. They're not novices as far as answering questions. What do you think for the most part, the honesty level is when they're trying to communicate with you? Do you think they're being as honest as they can, or do you think, it's probably case by case, but where do you think it lies most of the time when you're talking with them? Are they trying to tell you what you think what they think that you want to hear, or are they being honest?
To give a saying on how many are being honest, how many aren't, that's a really hard thing to know. But one of the things that's helpful that DOC has them do is it's not just a parole summary written by the by the case staff in the corrections. It's also a lot of questions that are answered by the offender themselves. And what I've noticed in that, and what I tend to do to try to tease some of that out, is how much are they just saying what they want, and how truthful are they being. Is I ask questions, but then I look for inconsistencies in what they wrote in responses, because a lot of times those are written ahead of time, sometimes even way ahead of time of us seeing them on the screen. So I'll read through those and then try to look for those inconsistencies in their answers. And that's usually a pretty good tell. That, or I'll ask them if they make a very blanket statement that you'll usually hear. I ask them specifics about it, and I'll ask them to give me details, not just this broad overarching statement that they all like to say. That's usually a good way.
How often are you face to face with them, or are you doing this mainly on Zoom?
So it's all, ever since I've been appointed, it's always been on Zoom.
Yeah. Thank you.
Or Teams. I think we use Teams. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask too, because what we heard from the folks last year was that it used to be in person, and they thought it was just a better situation, dealing with people in person. How often does the board meet?
So there's with all of us on the board, it's 3 days a week,
Oh wow.
and then we all take turns doing certain numbers of days. So we're not all of us are there 3 days a week, but we all take at least 1 day a week.
Wow, so that's a real commitment.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you again for doing this. Just to put another thought in your head, because you're in so many places. I don't know if they included you all. I think they did. That there was a re-entry simulation last Friday that the corrections folks did in person here in Montpelier, and it was to show people who are in corrections and in the court system the challenges that people face when they're getting out, and how difficult it is just to stay on a schedule. So if you, I guess, does the parole board hear from people about how well they're doing, or do you just set things in motion and then someone else looks at how it all worked out?
We don't typically get updates on how someone is doing after,
Okay.
But we will see them again if they don't do well.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And obviously I think all of our general goal is to have it be a one-time situation that they're in the carceral system.
Yeah, and I think I really think it's great when you're looking at it from a social work perspective, to when in release planning, it's important to take a look at not just like what you were just saying with how well someone's doing after the fact. It's when someone's released, when you look at something, I don't know if you've ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of need, but
Yeah.
you have to have those basic needs covered first before you can keep going up the higher levels to overall well-being. And so how well are we setting up those tiers so that they can reach that? Are their basic needs met first, which is the most important? And then, are we able to then move on to the next tier and sort of build them up to get them to that place? And I think if we're looking at that from the probation level and the parole level, in the county offices, I think that would be a great model to work from, for sure.
Great. Terrific. Well, thank you so much. I'm good. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Gary.
All right. Thank you so much for your work. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Okay, so now we will, Patricia Boucher is up next. Hi,
Good afternoon.
Katrina. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Did you hear our intros?
I did. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so we're from all around the state.
As are we.
Right, and where are South Burlington? Okay, we don't have a South Burlington person on the committee, but we have lots of them in the legislature, so you are well represented.
Thank you.
And so you've been on the parole board for a while.
Yes,
I'm sorry for the circumstances. Obviously, I mean, that's horrendous. But it's an important perspective to have.
yes,
So you probably heard just how I introduced it before. This committee, there are just two of us who were on the committee last year. Last year was my first time being on this committee, and so we heard from three members of the parole board whose terms were coming up, and now you all. So we're interested in understanding how your experience is on the board and why you want to continue, and then if you have any suggestions for us as legislators, which for sure isn't necessary, but I just think it's important to get information from people who are in the field. It's the most helpful information that I can think of.
I think that's important too. I don't know if you have any questions for me or.
Just generally, if you're interested in continuing.
Yes, I am.
And just generally what you would like us to know.
I believe when I was appointed to the board by Howard Dean, it was primarily because I was a victim, or my son was, and he thought it was important to have someone on the board that had victim experience. But since that time, of course, we have victims advocates, and it's evolved quite a bit as far as victims are concerned, and I find that great. We have a lot more victims come in front of the board than we've ever had. And I think that's important for everyone, as well as the offender. So, but a lot of changes have been made since I've been on the board. I like doing it on Teams. Traveling around was difficult after a while, especially in the winter. But I've thoroughly enjoyed everyone that I've worked with on the pro board. We've gotten to be friends. We're like a family. Get along with all of the probation and parole officers, excuse me, and everyone that I've encountered.
That's great. Now, I would think you would get some sort of training or orientation when you first get on the board, and you've been on the board for a while. Are there periodic trainings or updates that you get as a board?
Yes, we in the summer we meet in person once a month, and we always have either speakers or someone comes in and talks to us. In the winter we do it on Teams, and we have different speakers that come in and update us on things that are going on in corrections or different programs that they're initiating, or if we need advice on other parts of corrections. And that's really beneficial to us. It keeps us all in the same loop.
That makes sense. Great.
Yes.
Thank you for your service. One of the things, particularly with you, Rebecca, and I know that it has been a while. How do you keep your emotion out of it? Particularly when you hear some stories, you hear their stories, and or do you have some emotion when you hear? Do you use some of that in your judgments?
I do have some emotions. When I first got on the board, it was very emotional for me. I don't let that taint my decision as far as paroling someone. I keep an open mind. The offender in my case already had 8 DUI convictions, had lost his license 3 times for life, which I thought was incredible. But I do keep an open mind, and I take each offender individually. And I don't let my experiences cloud my judgment as far as that offender is concerned. I can separate those. I may not always like what I have to do, but I know it's the right thing to do. Because
Thank you.
no 2 people are the same.
Yeah, go ahead.
You interview both men and women in your job?
Yes.
And Katie had talked about that sometimes some people are on, some people are off. Are you on a rotation as far as looking at everyone, or certain days, or how's that work?
Well, I'm vice chair, so the chair, Dean George, and I alternate the hearing. So either he's doing the hearing day, or I'm doing the hearing day. So he and I do really more days than the board does. So, but we do rotate. And, Dean and I, like, he'll take St. Albans for a couple of months, and then I'll take St. Albans. So we have the different board members with us. And once in a while, Dean and I are on the same board together.
Are the hearings at the prison?
Yes, and the probation and parole offices. If someone's on furlough already, they're out in the field, and they come in front of us, we see them at the probation and parole office. The rest of them that are incarcerated, we do see them at the facility.
So do you see them in person when you're at the facility?
Yes, we do it on Teams.
Okay, but if you're, sorry to be dense, if the board is at the prison and the people are at the prison.
No, we aren't at the prison. We're all at our own homes on Teams.
Okay, but you said like going, or
Oh, I'm sorry. I call it going to the prison because that's where we're going, on Teams.
I see. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. No, thanks. Anything else? I have a question on the process. When you are making a decision, is there like a scale or a rubric or a score sheet that you use, and how, if you have something like that, how strict is it that you abide by that?
We do have sort of a chart that we go by as far as not the questions we want to ask, but different categories, different domains, and we score everybody, but we don't know how the other board members are deciding. We just we ask the questions we need to ask for ourselves, and sometimes we go into a deliberative session to discuss it. Otherwise, one of the board members will just make a motion, but you can pretty well tell how the questions are going, how we're leaning. But yeah, we do have questions in our mind that we're going to ask.
Okay. And do you have any observations on how the process or the system has changed over time?
Getting away from furlough has changed a lot. A lot of times we parole people right out of incarceration. And we didn't used to do that. They would go on furlough and then for a period of time, and then we'd see them for parole. And that's not the way it always is now. When they're eligible to be released into the community, we usually see them because they're eligible for parole.
Okay.
So that has changed.
Okay. And I don't know if that's good funding or,
They changed the community reentry furlough, so they no longer have a period prior to their minimum when they're eligible for parole to be released furlough. So now it used to be they were released on furlough and then they'd be eligible for parole. Now they're eligible for parole, but it's always when they hit their minimum.
Yes, when they hit their minimum.
I don't think it's earlier than that.
No.
it may not be appropriate for this conversation, but I would like to know if that's working well at some point. But that's
Yeah.
probably more of a conversation, like if that's better. When last year we heard from gentlemen, I don't remember their names, but one of them said in particular that he sees things getting better in terms of helping the folks who are getting out of incarceration to get to be functional in the outside of the prisons.
Yeah.
And that I thought that was a good, it's helpful to know.
Yes. For myself, I find that, I know housing is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult for me to parole someone who doesn't have that stability in the community. I think stability is very important for someone. And if they don't have appropriate housing, supports in the community, some wraparound services, I find that difficult because we all want these people to be successful. And once they get out of incarceration, and if they don't have that foundation, that's difficult. That's when they tend to reoffend. And then we see them again.
Right. Right. Well, I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Anybody have other, this is really helpful. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your service.
Well, thank you. I've appreciated being on the board and I hope I can continue.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure we will support you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
you're free to stay on if you want, if you'd like to.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so the third person is Samantha Drake. Hi, Samantha.
Hi, good morning.
Morning or afternoon.
Afternoon.
Were you online when we introduced ourselves?
Yes, I was.
Okay, great. And you are from Waterbury Center, so I think you don't have a direct representative, but there's only 5 of us, so we can't do the whole state. And you're an alternate member, and I think you're relatively new, right? Is that what I read?
Yep,
20
I've been on for about a year, so the same as Katie.
Okay, well, it's good that we're getting new people. So thank you for your service. And so you probably heard the questions that we've asked of others. So how are you liking it? And are there things you think we should know about the process? Do you want to add to what they've said or confirm some of the things that they said?
Okay, so I come to the board. I'm a lifelong Vermont resident. I graduated from Harwood Union High School in Duxbury. Shortly after that, I worked for the state of Vermont in the drug and alcohol abuse programs, working in the CRASH program, guiding people who have lost their licenses and gotten DUIs to complete the program and what they need to do to get their licenses reinstated. After that, shortly after that, about a year, I got a job where I have been since at the Vermont Center for Crime Victim Services, working in the restitution unit as a case manager. In 2019, I became a foster parent with my fiance. We had our 3 nieces and nephews, and provided support for our kiddos while their parents worked through some substance misuse things and battled incarceration. We had the kids for about a year. And then in 2021, I Jennifer Pullman, the executive director at the center, had me become her proxy at the Vermont Criminal Justice Council, and I've sat on that board since. And then yesterday was my 11-year anniversary at the restitution unit as a case manager. So I kind of have a little bit of a big background.
You do, you have a perfect background. Thank you.
Yeah. So I come to the board working with both victims and offenders. But I think something to know about coming from the restitution background is that we're not just a collection agency, and I'm not just trying to collect a debt. It's really about supporting the victims in cases, supporting the offenders, being able to provide and give them resources such as Working Fields, Jenna's Promise, and other agencies that can really help support them to become successful, because ultimately that's the goal, is to set up the incarcerated individuals or supervised individuals for success.
Definitely. Do you ever, or do they get referred to restorative justice programs in the communities?
Yes, absolutely. They do. Here at the restitution unit, we work closely with diversion and other restorative justice agencies.
Great. Questions?
I do actually. So I'm Senator Rob Plunkett. I'm also a prosecutor, so I apologize for all of the restitution judgment orders that are completely wrong that you have to deal with. But this isn't exactly a parole question, but I didn't know that the case managers, you all at the restitution unit, also do more with the services. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Is that part of your, I guess, is that part of your mission, or is it just something that you have found that you have to do in order to be the case manager?
I wouldn't necessarily say we have to do it. I would say for myself, it's a benefit for me. So if I can help somebody to become successful, to give them the resources that they need to become stable in the community, to get housing, to find a job, to find a vehicle, that helps not only the victim, but the offender, and it helps with community safety. It helps with just building that relationship. So then they are able to make their restitution payments.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm sorry I didn't know that until just now. So that's, is it something, well, maybe I'll talk to you offline at a different time more about that, but I'll take that back to my office and we'll look into it. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
How does it work as an alternate?
Honestly, I don't find any difference being an alternate than being a regular board member. I sit in on hearings just about once a week. I attend just like all the other board members. I go to the staff meetings. So honestly, from my perspective, I don't have a difference in being an alternate.
Are you appointed by the governor?
Yes, I was. Yep.
Yeah.
On a side note, working at the restitution unit, I sat in on parole hearings for about 10 years. So when the board traveled to the facilities and to each probation office, I kind of went in the background just to listen and see how it all worked and what questions were asked. And then since I've been on the board, it's all been virtual and on Teams, but I've worked with the board from the restitution perspective for a number of years as well.
That's great. So even though you're technically a new person, you're really not.
Exactly.
That's terrific.
I would say this, Samantha, and it would be about all three of you. I wish that you folks met in person as much as you could. I get that we did the Teams thing or Zoom thing during COVID times, but I just feel sitting across from somebody face to face that you get a lot more out of it. And I would love to see that you would meet in person. I think there's enough of you there where you folks could cover that and do that. But I'm not here to blow up the process. It's just a wish that I have.
Okay, I can take that to our staff meeting at the end of the month and let the chairman and the director know.
Yeah, and I share that wish. So, if there are things that, like, for example, if you needed more funding to meet in person or something like that, somebody could let us know, the chair could let us know.
Okay,
Let
absolutely.
corrections know and they'll bring it to us, because I agree that in person. And it would be good to get the input of your whole board on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to write that down and bring it to the staff meeting at the end of the month.
Great,
And I,
yes,
and maybe Rob or somebody, that was facilitated because of COVID, is that accurate?
that was because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
That we did that.
I
Right,
can't answer that confidently.
Okay.
that's my understanding, right, Senator Ingles, we did that because of COVID.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was,
Never
because
went back.
I'm just trying to go back, Senator Harrison, Chair Harrison, as far as you said, we've been here before, and I was here one term before you, and I think it used to be all in person, and then hearing that it was COVID, and they gone to this, but I wish it would get back to that. There's some things that are just more, they're better in life, and when you're making decisions on people, to be face to face versus to be on a screen.
Yep, and there's other areas in the legal system where we want folks to be more in person too. Okay, well, good. Well, this has been great. Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
We look forward to sending your information along. And so now, committee, I am impressed and appreciative of all three of the individuals. And let's just do a straw poll to support their.
Do you want Samantha to?
Yeah,
Sure.
do you want me to look to
You
shut
can
my
be
camera
there.
off?
I'm sorry, no, you can be there. I think they're all great.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
so this is just a straw poll.
Yeah.
So let's say yes to all three.
Yeah.
And maybe 2 hands if you really like them. Come on, but no,
I hope they
No,
also get
seriously.
the three wonderful
Yeah,
experts.
yeah.
That's each different and, yeah.
right, and to have such people who care so much, who have different backgrounds and different experiences, is tremendous, and that's what our system needs. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this week, if you don't mind. Or anything else on that, committee?
No.
Okay, so tomorrow we're scheduled to have John Gray here to walk us through.
He can come.
Good. H50, which we've been working on for a while. And on Friday,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
On H50, are we, after he goes to, are we looking to vote that out?
there's a possible vote, but I want to double check that we had all the witnesses that we needed. So if you all take a minute after this meeting to check and see if you need any more witnesses, let us know fast. Let me or Linda know.
Usually from Wanda, no, that's true.
Just Wanda and Aaron?
Yeah.
Okay. And this was the space book. This is the expansion of the space book. So I'm fine with just those two witnesses. It's, you guys
I'm good.
are cool with this?
Yeah.
Anybody? Okay, well, if for some reason you get it middle of the night, let us know fast, because it would be good to get that one finished. And then so far, we don't have anything on Thursday,
Are you in trouble?
potential field trip.
Field trip, I haven't heard
To
that
Windsor?
yet.
We'll
Right.
try it again. Yep.
I'm open.
Okay, so,
That'd be awesome.
yes,
Friday.
Friday, you won't be able to, okay.
I think Fridays are tough for me.
Oh, okay.
Don't let that stop you.
So we could even go on Thursday. Why don't we, or would you be available on Thursday? I mean, we have to drive down there and back.
Yeah, I think.
I wouldn't be.
You would not be available on Thursday? Okay, so maybe we'll go multiple times. I think it's really important to get the Senator from Windsor at that facility. And anybody else, I mean, please, come with us if you are able to. And because Newport, it's the next one.
And there are also some reps that may want to go as well.
Oh, okay, great.
And I can reach out.
Okay, all right. So, so that's a reason to go on Friday. So we'll
I'll
work
let
on
you know
that.
as soon as I hear back.
Perfect. And then, something that will be next week is a discussion about the Capitol complex generally. We've been talking a lot about property and, oh, it looks like it's all set.
Well,
for
I
Tuesday.
was gonna check with you for,
Okay.
those are the people I think we need inviting.
Okay, it's quite a group, but that's fine.
Okay.
And then we'll also be getting bills back from the other body on multiple things, probably data bill, capital bill eventually. So we'll be busy, and I actually appreciate the extra time in May this year. So that's all I have. Anybody have anything else?